Hey, welcome to Chapter 7. Here's some terminology that you already should know. An acute angle is less than 90 degrees. A right angle is equal to 90 degrees. An obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees, but not 180 degrees or more. It has to be less than 180. And a straight angle equals 180 degrees. You should have already known that, but now you do. Okay, in lesson 7.1, we're learning about adjacent angles and vertical angles. An adjacent angle, two adjacent angles, are when they share a common side and have the same vertex, meaning they're next to each other. For instance, in that top figure there, angles 1 and 2 are right next to each other, so they're adjacent. 2 and 3, they're right next to each other, so they're adjacent. 3 and 4, right next to each other, so they're adjacent. And 4 and 1, that's right, they're right next to each other, so they're adjacent. Vertical angles, on the other hand, are formed when two lines intersect, like the figure shows, and vertical angles are directly across from each other. So, 1 and 3 are vertical angles because they're right across from each other. 4 and 2 are vertical angles because they're right across from each other. And vertical angles are congruent, meaning they're the same size. So if angle 1 happened to be 100 degrees, angle 3 has to be 100 degrees because they're vertical, which means they're congruent, the same size. Adjacent angles do not have to be the same size, which is why I didn't say they were the same size. In example 1, naming angles, it says, use the figure shown. Name a pair of adjacent angles. So we're just looking for angles that are next to each other. Well, we do have to remember how we name angles. We put that little angly symbol thing there, and then we name 3 points on the angle. The middle point has to be the vertex, or where the corner is in the angle. So, adjacent angles could be angle ABC. If you look at that, that's the big one that opens to the right. And angle ABF. That's the one that's at the top. Those share a common side, AB, and they have a common vertex, B. So angles ABC and ABF are adjacent angles. They're next to each other. You can find other pairs of adjacent angles on this figure. Then it says, name a pair of vertical angles. Now remember, the vertical angles are going to be across from each other, but they have to be the same size. So, angle ABF at the top there is a vertical angle to angle CBD. Locate that angle and notice they're across from each other and they're the same size. Those are the only two vertical angles that are like that. Okay, so you're not going to find other vertical angles on this figure. Here you're supposed to name 2 pair of adjacent angles and 2 pair of vertical angles. So for figure 1, you could name a pair of adjacent angles. Remember, those are next to each other. And then you have to name another pair of adjacent angles. Then you have to name a pair of vertical angles. Remember, those are across from each other. And then another pair of vertical angles. For figure 2, you have to do the same thing. Name 1 pair and then another pair for adjacent angles. Then 1 pair, then another pair of vertical angles. For example 2, we're using adjacent and vertical angles. So we're using what we know about them to solve some problems. In example 2a here, it says the angles are vertical angles. Because they're vertical angles, they're congruent, which means they have the same measure. So we know that x is equal to 70. Because they're vertical angles, they have to be the same size. And one of them 70 degrees, so the other one's 70 degrees. In example 2b, First of all, we can see that that full angle is a right angle. We know because of that little right angle mark down in the corner. They'll put that on there so we don't have to guess. Is that a right angle? Could be 89 degrees or 91 degrees. Nope, they put that red little box down there so you know it's 90 degrees. Because it's 90 degrees, we know that those two angles, two adjacent angles that make up the right angle, will add up to 90 degrees. So 31 plus x plus 4 equals 90. Then we combine like terms, 4 plus 31 to get x plus 35 equals 90. Subtract 35 from both sides, and x equals 55. We can get all of that because we know that those two angles, when put together, equal that 90-degree angle. For this chapter, you are going to need a protractor to do some of the problems like out of the book or in some of these videos, but I'll make sure you don't need a protractor to draw angles on any of the quizzes or tests. But if you do want to be able to draw and construct some of these things, which will not be on the quizzes or tests, you'll need to go out and get one. Or contact the school and we can get one too. You can come in and pick one up. Here, if you're going to be constructing these, to draw a pair of vertical angles with a measure of 40 degrees, first you have to draw a 40-degree angle. And you do this by drawing one ray, meaning one of the sides, put a little dot on one end, that'll be the vertex. Put that vertex right in the little hole that's right in the middle of your protractor, and make sure that the leg or the line that you've drawn goes along the straight edge. Then go up to where it's 40 degrees, put a dot, draw your line. Once you have your 40-degree angle, use a straight edge or the edge of your protractor to extend the sides to form two intersecting lines. So you'll have a figure like the one on the right. Again, you don't have to do the constructing angles. They won't be on the quizzes or tests. For these on your own problems, number 3, 4, and 5, you're supposed to tell whether they're adjacent or vertical. Remember, adjacent means they're next to each other, and vertical means they're across from each other. 2 of these are adjacent. Only one of them is vertical. When they're adjacent, if they go together to form a straight line, that means they add up to 180 degrees. So for number 3, since they go together to form a straight line, you could write an equation that would say 85 plus x, that's those two angles added together, is going to equal 180 degrees. Then you can solve for x. For number 4, it's a little more simple because they're vertical. We know they're equal to each other, and one of them's a right angle because of the little box, which tells you it's 90 degrees. So I wonder what x could be since they're equal. And for number 5, those two angles add up to 90 degrees. So 69 plus 2x minus 1 equals 90. You can solve for x to figure out what it is. And then, for the last one is a construction. You don't have to do this one, but if you want to and you have a protractor, give it a try. Number 3 says measure each angle formed by the intersecting lines. You don't have to measure these. I mean, I would imagine you'd be trying to put your protractor up to the screen or maybe on your phone or whatever device you're trying to use. Don't measure these, but do try number 4.